The cardboard box trembled in Rowan Hale's hands as the elevator doors slid open to the glittering lobby below. Outside the towering glass windows, the city shimmered in bright Christmas Eve daylight, wrapped in gold sunlight and strings of decorations. Inside, everything felt cold. His 6-year-old daughter, Mira, clutched his fingers tightly, her pink coat bright against the gray of his wool overcoat, her small backpack slipping off one shoulder as she looked up at him with confused, frightened eyes. In the box were 10 years of loyalty, his framed Employee of the Year certificate, a chipped coffee mug that read, "World's Okayest Accountant," and a crayon drawing Mira had made of the two of them holding hands beneath a crooked rainbow. Rowan had been fired 20 minutes before Christmas break. He had walked into the morning staff meeting expecting holiday greetings and had walked out unemployed. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to And Stories. Your support keeps stories like this alive and reminds the world that compassion still matters. The lobby was dressed for celebration. A towering Christmas tree sparkled near the reception desk, wrapped in silver garlands and delicate glass ornaments. Employees in festive sweaters hurried past with gift bags and laughter, some avoiding Rowan's eyes, others offering awkward half-smiles. The sunlight streaming through the windows illuminated the dust motes in the air, turning them into tiny floating stars, but none of that light reached Rowan's chest. It felt as if someone had hollowed him out. He had known the company was restructuring, but he had never imagined his name would be on the list. He had worked overtime for months, covering shifts, solving crises quietly, ensuring the numbers balanced so everyone else could go home to their families without worry. Christmas bonuses had been processed just yesterday. Ironically, he had been the one who approved them. Mira squeezed his hand again and asked why Daddy looked sad. Rowan forced a smile, the kind parents master when their hearts are splintering. He told her it was just a long day. He could not bring himself to say the word, fired. He could not bring himself to explain that the paycheck that kept their tiny apartment warm, that bought her winter boots and piano lessons, had vanished in a single corporate sentence. The truth was, Rowan had already been living on the edge for years. 3 winters earlier, his wife, Tessa, had passed away after a sudden illness that moved too quickly for goodbyes. Grief had swallowed him whole, but Mira had been too young to understand death. She had only known that Mommy stopped coming home. Rowan had learned how to braid hair by watching online tutorials at midnight. He had burned more dinners than he could count before mastering Myra's favorite tomato soup. He had taken on extra projects at work to cover medical bills that lingered like ghosts in their mailbox. Through it all, he had never complained. He had believed that hard work was a shield against misfortune. The termination meeting had been brief and clinical. A new executive named Victor Sloan had presented charts and projections about cost-cutting measures. Rowan's position, he was told, was redundant. His responsibilities would be distributed across departments. The company appreciated his dedication, but the numbers didn't justify his role anymore. Rowan had nodded, stunned, his mind racing through rent payments and grocery lists, calculating how long his modest savings would last. Victor had not looked up from his tablet while delivering the news. As Rowan stepped toward the glass exit doors, he paused when he noticed the reflection of someone standing behind him. It was Althea Grant, the company's CEO. She rarely appeared in the lobby unannounced. Known for her fierce intelligence and unwavering standards, she was admired and feared in equal measure. She stood near the security desk, arms crossed, watching him. Her tailored cream blouse contrasted sharply with the dark office interior, and the sunlight highlighted the determined line of her jaw. Rowan assumed she was simply observing the effects of the restructuring she had authorized. He lowered his gaze and guided Mira outside into the crisp afternoon air. The plaza in front of the building was busy with shoppers carrying brightly wrapped gifts. Carolers sang near the fountain, their voices buoyant and warm. Mira stared at them, momentarily distracted, but Rowan felt as if he were walking through a scene meant for someone else's life. He set the cardboard box down on a bench to adjust Myra's scarf. The world was celebrating. He was unraveling. The truth was that Rowan had not slept well in weeks. He had discovered something unsettling during a routine audit, an irregularity in a major account overseen by Victor Sloan. The numbers didn't align. There were subtle shifts, transfers masked as operational expenses, amounts small enough individually to avoid suspicion but significant in total. Rowan had followed the trail carefully, double-checking everything before raising the issue. He had sent a confidential report to the executive board, believing transparency was his duty. 2 days later, He had been called into the restructuring meeting. He could not prove the connection, but the timing felt too sharp to ignore. Back in the lobby, Althea Grant remained still, watching the father and daughter disappear through the revolving doors. Something about the image of the little girl holding her father's hand unsettled her. She had built her empire from nothing, driven by ambition and discipline, but family had always been an afterthought. She had sacrificed relationships to grow the company. Christmas to her was a strategic pause in quarterly performance. Yet the sight of Myra's hopeful face lingered in her mind long after Rowan left. Midday sunlight flooded the executive conference room as Althea convened an unscheduled meeting. She requested detailed explanations for each termination decision. When she reached Rowan's file, she noticed his performance reviews glowed with praise. Loyal, meticulous, ethical. The word ethical appeared more than once. She asked Victor to elaborate on why his role had been eliminated. Victor spoke smoothly about efficiency and overlapping duties. But when Althea requested the original audit reports from the previous quarter, Victor hesitated. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but she noticed. Hours later, while most employees left early for holiday celebrations, Althea sat alone in her office reviewing Rowan's confidential report. The irregularities were there, documented with precision. The numbers did not lie. The realization struck her like a physical blow. The person she had trusted to execute restructuring had manipulated accounts for personal gain, and silenced the one man who uncovered it. Outside, Rowan and Mira had boarded a bus toward their neighborhood. Mira leaned against his side, humming softly. Rowan stared out the window at storefronts draped in wreaths. He tried to calculate how to make Christmas feel normal for her. He had already bought a small second-hand doll she had wanted. It was hidden in the closet at home. He prayed she would not sense the anxiety humming beneath his calm exterior. Back at the office, Althea's composure fractured. She imagined Rowan explaining to his daughter why he was suddenly home during work hours. She imagined the weight of losing a spouse and carrying parenthood. Alone, for the first time in years, she felt something beyond quarterly targets. She instructed legal to freeze all of Victor's access immediately. An internal investigation began at once. By late afternoon, evidence of embezzlement was undeniable. The betrayal cut deep. She had prided herself on reading people well. She had misjudged the wrong man. As daylight began to fade into a soft winter glow, Althea made a decision that startled even her assistant. She ordered her driver to take her to the address listed in Rowan's file. It was not far, a modest apartment complex decorated with paper snowflakes taped to the windows. Children played in the courtyard, their laughter echoing between buildings. The CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation stepped out of a sleek black car and walked toward a stairwell that smelled faintly of pine cleaner. Rowan was sitting at their small kitchen table helping Mira cut shapes out of colored paper when there was a knock at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment, fear flickered through him, another bill collector, perhaps. When he opened the door and saw Althea Grant standing there in the fading afternoon light, he felt the world tilt again. She looked different without the polished boardroom setting. The sunlight caught in her eyes, revealing exhaustion and something else, regret. She stepped inside after a brief introduction and saw the simple decorations Mira had taped to the walls. A single string of lights framed the window. The apartment was tidy but worn. On the fridge hung Myra's drawings, including the one that had been in Rowan's box earlier. Althea did not waste time. She explained the discovery of financial misconduct. She admitted that Rowan's termination had been unjust. Her voice, usually unwavering, trembled slightly as she apologized. She told him Victor Sloan had been dismissed and that the company would be pressing charges. She offered Rowan his position back immediately, with a promotion to Director of Financial Compliance, a salary increase, and a formal public acknowledgement of his integrity. Rowan listened in silence. Part of him wanted to refuse out of wounded pride. Another part recognized the stability Mira needed. He looked at his daughter, who watched the exchange with wide, curious eyes. He thought about the bills on the counter and the future he wanted for her. He agreed, not for himself, but for Mira. Althea's composure finally cracked when Mira shyly handed her a paper snowflake. It was uneven and delicate, cut with the clumsy precision of a child learning symmetry. Mira said it was for her, because it was Christmas. Althea felt tears sting her eyes unexpectedly. In boardrooms she had negotiated million-dollar deals without flinching, but this small act of generosity dismantled her carefully constructed armor. She realized that leadership without humanity was hollow. Word of the internal scandal spread quickly through the company. By the following week, Rowan returned to the office not as a dismissed employee but as a symbol of accountability. Colleagues who had avoided his gaze now met it with respect. The Christmas tree still stood in the lobby, its lights now softer against the winter sky. This time, when Rowan walked through the doors with Mira beside him, because her school was still on break, there was warmth in the air that hadn't been there before. Althea instituted new transparency policies and created a scholarship fund for employees' children in Myra's name. She began hosting quarterly open forums, inviting staff at every level to speak openly. The company culture shifted gradually, imperfectly, but meaningfully. Rowan threw himself into his new role, determined to ensure no one else would be silenced for doing the right thing. Christmas Day arrived bright and clear. Sunlight poured through Rowan's apartment window as Mira tore open her gift and squealed with joy at the sight of the doll she had wanted. Rowan felt a quiet gratitude settle in his chest. They were safe. They were together. Later that afternoon, a delivery arrived from Althea, a small tree ornament shaped like a snowflake with a handwritten note thanking Mira for reminding her what truly matters. Sometimes, the greatest transformations do not happen in grand speeches or dramatic victories, but in the quiet recognition of truth. Rowan had nearly lost everything for standing by his principles. Althea had nearly lost her company's soul by trusting convenience over character. But on a bright Christmas Eve, in the middle of a day that began with heartbreak, courage and conscience altered the course of both their lives. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something special. If Rowan's strength and Myra's kindness moved you, please comment, "Second chances matter," below. Let your voice join theirs. And if this story touched your heart even a little, please like, share, and engage with the video. Your support spreads messages of hope farther than you know. Because sometimes all it takes to change a life is the courage to do what is right, and the compassion to admit when we were wrong.